Welcome to OAA Now. I'm Sam Tamina, blogger of the Dragons Den, blog from inside the OAA. I'm one of the hosts between Tamina's and Oriented Neighborhood Television. I'd like to welcome our friends watching on Oxford Community Television and also those watching on YouTube. I had a good show talking about today. Of course, we got some big news around the league. Of course, big changes surrounding one of our local newspapers here. Of course, MI Prep Zone making some changes. And also, we're going to look at a couple things. Of course, what are the top games around the OAA? Of course, the big ones surrounding the football season. Of course, we're early in the process, of course, and I watched a podcast by Jeff Dullock of State Champs. I will have him on. I'll have him on, of course, on the in a couple weeks. So we'll talk with him about his thoughts about the OAA season. So let's go to our main story. Of course, when you look at of course, West Bloomfield, they added a couple more transfers to the fold. Of course, we all know about this team, but they just added, I think his name is Cadrill Goldsmith from Grosse Pointe South. Of course, he was a running back for the Blue Devils a year ago, and now he is a Laker. And you really look at what happened on that team. Of course, West Bloomfield, people ask me about West Bloomfield football, and they say, well, West Bloomfield's a team. They rely a lot on transfers with their team, and yeah, they do, because when you look at the program that they have, of course, you look at West Bloomfield. They added, of course, we know about Taj Mustafa, and we know about Bryce Beasley. Of course, they both came over from Southfield Lathrop, but when you look at West Bloomfield, who they added, of course, Dalen Baldwin from Birmingham Brother Rice. You add a guy like A.J. Abbott from Northville. He committed to Wisconsin recently. He transferred over from Northville. And then, of course, you add Colin Hurd, who transferred from Groves. So that's a big addition for West Bloomfield. You really look at West Bloomfield's offense, it's pretty much a very similar Northwestern type of spread offense. And, when you look at the thing that concerns me at West Bloomfield, yeah, I know their head coach, Ron Bellamy. Really good coach, really good man. I've interviewed him numerous times on ONTV. I've thinking about personally inviting him to the podcast. But when you look at this, when you look at West Bloomfield, I mean, last few years, this team has really added transfers to their fold, and a lot of people I know do not like it, and it is what it is, The MHA, it looks like nowadays is that you're looking at the emergency transfers coming over, and you look at, are they there really for the academics part of it, or are they really there for the, or are they there really or are they really there to make a super team to have a chance at maybe a state championship team? That's the question. Do transfers help? Sometimes they do. Most of the times they don't. And West Bloomfield this year, they're going to be loaded. They are loaded. When you look at who they got, you look at Christian Fitzpatrick, Colin Hurd, Tyrone Broden, Trey Mosley, James Faulkner, tight end. And you look at, of course, Bryce Beasley, their quarterback, and he committed to Bowling Green. So the only thing that concerns me with this football team is line play. And I've said you can have all the athletes around here. You can have top-notch athletes, but if you don't have line play, you're not going to win. There's no doubt about that. And West Bloomfield's got 3 starters back. They do. But when you look at the situation, how that's unfolded, if you don't have good line play, you ain't going to win games. West Bloomfield's got an interesting schedule. They got Clarkson at home. They got to play Walled Lake Western at Michigan. We'll go over that next segment. But, do transfers, are we in an age now that the transfer thing is getting out of control? It really is. You look at Detroit Cass Tech, who they've added. You look at really, Southfield Arts and Tech in the past, they really have gotten kids to come over there, but they just recently lost kids. A lot of them went to Detroit. Sam Johnson III left Southfield Arts and Tech to go to Walled Lake Western. So that's very interesting to say the least. So when you really look at the when you really look at West Bloomfield, I mean, they've added a lot of weapons. There's no doubt about that. They are a team that added so much weapons, and it's very interesting because I'm reading right now in the article here, according to Scott Bernstein. Of course, Scott Bernstein, I've had him on the podcast. I mean, it was a comment about West Bloomfield football, of course, with Coach Ron Bellamy. He said that this team could be a special team in a couple months. They are very capable of it. Yeah, they are. They are. They just got to have line play. If they do, they're going to be fine. You know, they just got to have line play. If they don't, bad things are going to happen. And when you look at the situation how that unfolded, West Bloomfield, you know, you got to really look at, it will make teams better, but if you have depth, you know, I look at the transfer opportunity and say, well, what about the kid who's playing JV football, who's worked hard, or freshman football, has worked hard for about, you know, trying to get their opportunity to go up in varsity, and then you have a kid who's coming in, transferring in. How does that kid feel? You know, and I think it's unfair. It's not right. You know, and I don't think, you know, it's not a good situation, to say the least. But, you know, when you look at it, they're going to be, you know, look at West Bloomfield this year. You know, they're going to be loaded. They have college recruits everywhere. Is it college bound? Is it college efforts? You know, I always say, in my opinion, colleges go to the athlete. It's not like the athlete has to go to a different school just for a team to get a look. You know, I know when I look at other colleges, I look at Mark D'Antonio, Michigan State. You know, he always looks for kids who are, who are like 2-3 star recruits. You know, you look at, of course, you don't have to be, I think personally, you look at these ratings people, I call them a bunch of hippies. And, you know, these people who rate these athletes, as like 4-star, 5-star recruits. I mean, you know, sometimes it doesn't work out. It really doesn't. And, you know, I think those who rate these players they're hippies. That's what I think personally. But it'll be very interesting for West Bloomfield. Now, it's very interesting because there's another team that has a lot of stars there. There's another one named Oak Park. Oak Park's got a lot of good athletes on that team. They develop their kids. I mean, yeah, they got a Belleville transfer in Dwan Mathis a couple years back, but you know what? Dwan Mathis has done very well at Oak Park. He's done very well at the Knights. I mean, when you look at the Knights this year, I think Oak Park's going to be a really good football team. I mean, if you think about it, if West Bloomfield played Oak Park this year, and it's very possible they could play in the crossover, who would I take? Would I take the team that has a ton of athletes on the outside and a very good dual threat quarterback in West Bloomfield, or would I take a team that's very good up front, very loaded, but they're very unproven, basically with the wide receivers and, of course, the running game? But they got experience too. Who would I take? Would I take West Bloomfield or would I take Oak Park? I would honestly take, if I had to take a team right now, and I hate to be honest, but, you know, I look at this very similar to the 2010 season. Of course, when you had Lake Orion, who was very good, you had Farm Tales Harris, that was very good in Division II, Oak Park's in Division II, West Bloomfield in Division I. But I think right now when I look at it, I think I can't trust West Bloomfield's line. I just really cannot trust that line. Yeah, they got 3 starters back. But when you look at this team, Oak Park's has a lot more experience, I think, and a lot more cohesiveness. Whereas you look at West Bloomfield, adding those transfers, you know, how is West Bloomfield going to have those cohesiveness together? You know, especially because your first week, you're playing a team like Wall Lake Western. Yeah, they got some fair share of transfers. But you got Spencer Brown, you look at a very good lineman, and you got Sam Johnson III, who I think West Bloomfield should know because they went up against him last year. So basically, when I look at West Bloomfield, I mean, I really don't like the fact that they added these these transfers to come over there. I mean, I don't know what it says about the program, but when you really look at their sub-varsity programs, how they can develop them, I mean, in football, there are times that you don't rely on transfers to help you. There's really times. Transfers can help you, but there's times that they don't. If you develop that program, you basically develop that program, and you basically can grow that program. You basically can say is, well, West Bloomfield, we have a good athlete who can do some damage, who's coming in from such and such school, and he's coming into your school. How would you feel if you're a player and you're basically saying, well, I don't want to take a back seat to this transfer coming in. So to me, it's very interesting, to say the least, how transfers can come in there. I mean, I basically feel for the kid who is the understudy of a transfer, because in my opinion, that transfer's going to play a lot. He's going to get the looks. Because college is looking at him. And here is basically alienating yourself. That's how it is. So when you look at West Bloomfield, they're going to be very good. There's no doubt. Do I think you can throw Detroit Cass Tech? Yeah. They got to be disciplined, though, if they have a chance. But, you got to look at teams like Saline who could do some damage. You got to look at, everybody knows Detroit Cass Tech. I really think that Detroit Cass Tech they're loaded, sure, but I don't think their schedule is as tough as people think. Really don't. I mean, I'm not being mean to them, but if I had to say right now, if there's a team that can beat Detroit Cass Tech, it's West Bloomfield, because they match them athletically, but the line play is a big concern. It really is. You have Abbott going to Wisconsin, Stafford going to Wisconsin, and you have, but I just don't like how Abbott, Thompson, and Hurd all came in from other schools. I really didn't like that. Abbott could have had a really special year at Northville. He could have had a really special year there. Or Colin Hurd, be a leader at Groves. Or Bryce Thompson, working with the new regime at Brandon Brother Rice. So that they all come to West Bloomfield. And then that's not counting Christian Goldsmith, transferred from Grosse Pointe South to go to West Bloomfield. So, for me personally, it's going to be a tough offense to go up against. It's going to be a really, really tough offense. Defensively, West Bloomfield, I think, is going to be one of the areas that they had some issues last year. So that's another interesting question. So when I look at this team, they got some players. They got some players that came into their system. They got some players that can build. But, when you really look at the team next year, you know what I mean? You're really looking at it for this year, Because you have Beasley's a senior. You look at Mustafa's a senior. Faulkner's a senior. Hurd's a senior. Abbott's a senior. And Thompson's a senior. So basically, you got a lot of senior experience that can really do well for West Bloomfield, just for this season. But what if they struggle? What if they fail? Everybody talked about West Bloomfield's super team back in 2015. And that was a team I thought personally would get the state final. Instead, they lose in the first round to Novi. They lost in the first round to Novi. I don't know if they underestimated them or Novi played a heck of a game. But at the end of the day, you got to give them credit. You got to give Novi credit. We'll go over their matchup with Groves coming up week 1. So that'll be a really interesting matchup for them. So when you look at West Bloomfield, their passing attack's going to be elite. I mean, their passing attack, when you look at teams like in the red division, that really I've got serious concerns in the secondary. Lake Orion, big concern in the secondary. Oxford's got some concerns there. Clarkson, they got some concerns there as well. I mean, Southern Arts and Tech, I don't think really has much concerns in that secondary to threaten West Bloomfield, but those three teams, they got concerns, big concerns. Adams, and we all know about Troy Athens. They got some concerns in the secondary. So, West Bloomfield could do some damage. They could. But if somebody beats West Bloomfield, if you want to beat West Bloomfield, you have to run the ball on them. You're going to have to basically, you have to control the clock, keep that offense off the field. You do that, you can beat them. It's not going to be an easy order. It's not going to be an easy task, I'll say that much. But you know what? You want to beat West Bloomfield. You want to beat them. You got to play time possession football. That may be the only way to beat West Bloomfield. Unless you have the athletes to match them up. And when I look at the red, I don't know if there's anybody in the red that can match them up. Match up their skilled athletes. Unless you play well. So that's interesting to see what happens with West Bloomfield. Really, really interesting what happens with them. My final thoughts on the transfers of West Bloomfield's transfers. A lot of teams have transfers. I'm not picking on West Bloomfield. I mean, they've had a lot of transfers come up their system in the past. I mean, let's not forget. Clarkston, they had transfers. They won their state title. When you look at Detroit Cass Tech, they've had transfers. They won their state titles. When you look at, heck, even there were times, Lake Orion. I mean, of course, they had one transfer on that team. But you know what? Even so, you look at all the transfers coming in, coming into play. It benefits one side, doesn't benefit the other. So, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens going forward. So we'll see what happens there. Okay, now when we come back, we're going to preview the Week 1 matchups for football. Of course, the who has the toughest road here on OAA Now.
If you keep tanning, indoors or out, the effects of harmful rays will show up on your skin. Wrinkles, age spots, and an increased risk of melanoma, the second most common cancer in women 15 to 29. Stop tanning. Time may not be on your side. Learn how to protect your skin at spotskincancer.org. A message from the American Academy of Dermatology.
Welcome back to OAA Now. I'm Sammy Termina here. Of course, we got some interesting, we're going to preview some football games here, some key games, starting out with the, why I think the last few years the OAA has not played really well. They've really not fared well heading in their Week 1 games. When you look at the losses, they've really been vital. Basically, especially last year with Harrison, they were left out of the playoffs despite the fact they had a really, really good, they were really, really good in points scored, points against. But when you look at how the league, how 5-4 teams got in, Lake Orion and West Bloomfield got in last year at 5-4. And, of course, they've had the benefit of playing a tough schedule. So when you look at having those type of schedules, they will help a lot. They really will help a lot. Let's look at some of these tough games first. We're going to go first. I think it's a very interesting matchup. The first one I'm going to say is Stony Creek. They're going to be taking on Utica Ford week 1. And this is a very interesting matchup because Stony Creek's going to be going to Runkle Field. Basically, it's on the campus of Sterling Heights-Stevenson. Basically, when you look at it, of course, Bob Lancey knows his team very well from his days at Utica Eisenhower. So this is a very interesting matchup for Stony Creek. Of course, Frank Potesma, their quarterback, really had an interesting year last year. Of course, playing in the Red Division. Of course, he's going to be a junior this year. And I think they had a really tough transition year for Stony Creek, of course, going from a Brad Zuby system to a Bob Lancey system, of course. I really did like what Lancey did last year with the uniforms over at Stony Creek, putting a nameplate in the back. I really like that. I expect he's going to do it again this year. But, this is the first ever meeting between Stony Creek and Utica Ford. Really is. But they have Lancey. Lancey, I think, is the key in this matchup because of his knowledge of Utica Ford. And I think what really doesn't help Utica Ford here is, the fact that since 2011, they've had one playoff appearance. They were 12-34 since. And, they were 2-7 last season. So, for Stony Creek, this is a perfect opportunity for them to get to a good start. And, that's why I'm saying Bob Lancey should know this team quite well because of his days at Utica Eisenhower. But if Utica Ford, I'm not sure what they got back, but they're going to be it could be a very interesting matchup because Utica Ford playing at Runkle Field against Stony Creek. Stony Creek, going into Macomb County, never is an easy thing. But when you have a coach like Bob Lancey there, anything's possible. Really is. Anything is possible. So that's an interesting matchup there. My next matchup here is Royal Oak taking on St. Clair Shores Lakeview. It's a rematch from last year. Royal Oak was shut out 21-0 by the Lakeview Huskies in St. Clair Shores. Last year I had Royal Oak, I think, ranked 10th in the league to start. And you look at this team. I thought last year Royal Oak, I thought they would make more progress after they finished 4-5 in 2015. Instead, they finished 2-7 and are 6-21 since 2014. That's not good. That is not good. Because when you look at this team, this is a team that I thought personally Ray McMahon's team would take that next step up, possibly be a playoff team. I thought they would be. This was a perfect matchup for Royal Oak because Lakeview, they're a wing T team. They're a wing T team. And they can't score against the Huskies? It doesn't make any sense. This was a team that I thought would make some noise. They did not. Last year they finished 2-7. They were 2-7. What does that tell me? What does that tell me about them? It doesn't tell me much. It tells me that they were overrated. That's what it tells me. So, I'm curious to see what they have this year. Games at Royal Oak. For Royal Oak to win that game, they have to send a message. If they don't, if they don't and they go on a bad losing streak, it's going to be unfortunate for them. The blue is winnable this year for them. Really is. But they have to win that game against Lakeview. If they don't, it could be deja vu all over again. That's what I'm saying about Royal. That's what I'm saying. It'll be deja vu if they lose again to Lakeview. Let's go to Pontiac taking on Detroit Old Redford Academy. That game's be played at Detroit Old Redford Academy. Rematch, what happened last year at Wisner Stadium. Legendary place in Pontiac. Lost a tough one, though, 21-15. Lost a heartbreaker. I mean, Old Redford finished 2-7. Pontiac went 0-9. John Thompson should have experience from his coaching experiences. He was at Detroit Loyola, We had success. He had plenty of success going down in Wayne County. However, Pontiac, on the other hand, has not had a lot of success. 2-43 since 2011. It's not good. That is not good. They have not been the same football team since Brad Zuby coached that team, and yet, of course, let's not forget, they've went through a lot. They went through financial crises. They went through bad economic times. They've went through loss of kids to other schools. They really haven't benefited from the open enrollment era. They really have not. But, and Pontiac has really struggled. They've really struggled. So, when I look at this team, this is a game I think they need to win. This is a game that, if they can win this game, I think they'll be okay. They're going to be A-okay. But it could be really tough for Pontiac. It could be another tough ride. So, for Pontiac to win this game, they have to win this game at Detroit Old Redford Academy. Have to. And if they don't, it's going to be a long year. Really will be. Let's look at Troy Athens. They take on Warren Mott. This is an interesting matchup but I honestly wonder why. Why in the Blue Blazes is Troy Athens playing Warren Mott in the first place? Why? Is it because of that friendship between Josh Hepner and Tom Milanoff? You look at the last 3 years, the last 3 times these two teams played, Troy Athens has gotten outscored 116-20. 116-20. You got to be kidding me. Why are you playing these guys when you're getting outscored 116-20 in your last 3 meets? Why? This is a football team that's 13-33 since 2011. You got to get a win somehow, and you're playing in the red division this year. You're playing against the likes of Southfield Arts and Tech, West Bloomfield, Lake Orion, Clarkston, Oxford. Yeah, and Adams? Yikes! You got to be kidding me. And you're playing Warren Mott week 1. An underrated team in the Macomb Area Conference. They've had some wins last year. Warren Mott beat Dakota a couple years back. Let's not forget that. And they got to play Troy Athens. And Troy Athens got to go on the road to them. What does that say? It's a tough matchup. And let's not forget Josh Hepner lost his offensive coordinator, Billy Keatist. He's not coaching at Berkeley. But that's a brutal matchup, to say the least. That is a brutal matchup for Troy Athens. It's going to be tough. Next, we're going to go to Ferndale and Madison Heights Lamphere. Ferndale, of course, made the playoffs last year. 142-7. Made the playoffs first time since 2008. Went to Madison Heights and beat them by that score. I think it's really helped Ferndale with that co-op program. I really do. But it'll be very interesting because Madison Heights Lamprey's got a new coach. But they do have a home game, though. They have a home game. So it'll be very interesting, to say at least. So Ferndale's going to be a different team. I've got really big concerns about their line. I got a lot of concerns around that offensive line and their defensive line. They got a very good quarterback. They got a very good running back. But they got some concerns. So it'll be tough. It'll be a tough matchup for them. But I think Ferndale's got a shot here. They got a shot. They got a very tough schedule, though. They got to play Detroit Country Day week 4. That's going to be tough. They still got to play Avondale. And they got to play Farmington on that schedule. That's not going to be easy games. Really is not. Really won't be. So that'll be very interesting there. Let's look at Clarkston taking on Lapeer. It's going to be played at Michigan. This is very interesting because, when I look at this matchup, Lapeer's been a really good football team in the past. They've been really good. Ever since they merged Lapeer East, Lapeer West. However, when you look at the 5 losses, 3 were to Clarkston. And of course, let's not forget they lost some key players. They lost, they got some players back. They got Brady Apple back. Will Soley's back. But they did lose a couple key players, though. They lost the Kinney brothers. Isaac and Sam Kinney both transferred out. So that'll be very interesting, to say the least. And Clarkston, of course, not forget, they got a guy named Michael Flugel on that team. They got 2 very good offensive linemen on that team. Clarkston can rely a lot on that running attack. So that's going to be very interesting. So looking at this matchup for Lapeer, this is more of a statement game for Lapeer than it is for Clarkston. Because Clarkston's proven they've beaten Lapeer. They can beat Lapeer. They've already done it to them. They've done it 3 times. 2 of them in the playoffs. So if Lapeer wants to make a big statement, this is the game they make their statement. They got to beat Clarkston. The pressure's on Lapeer to beat Clarkston. It's not on Clarkston to beat Lapeer. It's on Clarkston. It's on Lapeer to beat Clarkston. So that's the question. Can Lapeer beat Clarkston? Be tough. Be a tough matchup. But, it'll be interesting to see what Lapeer has. Be very interesting what Lapeer has. It'll be very interesting, to say the least. We got North Farmington taking on Greenville at Grand Valley State. It's very interesting because I did some research here. Greenville is only 44 miles away from Grand Valley State. Grand Valley State's in Allendale. And you look at North Farmington, they're going to have to take a long travel there. And this is the first game for Coach Bob Chesa. He's going to have a tough task turning around this football team. They were 0-9 last year. Had some defections that left the team. They'll be tested in Greenville. They'll be tested against Greenville, against the Yellow Jackets, who have 2 good players, Kyle Lorenz and Jacob Gladding. But North Farmington's got to improve a ton. Last season, their offense they only scored 32 points last year. That's not good. Really, it's not good. They gave up a ton of points as well. So this will be very interesting to see what happens. I'll be curious to see if I am Greenville. I don't have a lot of film on Chesa's team. Would they go and search? Would they go and look at Chesa's record as defense coordinator at Heartland, Wild Lake Western, or Waterford, Vermont? That's a question. But Greenville, I don't think, has got any idea what North Farmington has. I really don't. Because North Farmington last year they were terrible. They were horrible last year. And you really look at North Farmington, they can be an improved team. They really can. But they've got some questions. A ton of questions, to say the least. This is a football team that really has a ton of questions. So this is a team I think to keep an eye on is North Farmington. It really is. It really is. Next, we got Hazel Park taking on Warren Fitzgerald. I can say a lot about this rivalry. It's not been a rivalry lately. They call this rivalry the Battle of 9 Mile. Divides the schools by a mile. DeQuinton Road separates who's in the Warren School District or in the Consolidated School District or Hazel Park School District. The rivalry, however, has not been kind. Of course, Hazel Park's the West Siders. Warren Fitzgerald's the East Siders. Hazel Park, of course, in Oakland County. Warren Fitzgerald, Macomb County. And this really has not been a pretty rivalry. Really is not. When you really look at what has happened to Hazel Park, it has not been much of a rivalry. The East Siders of 9 Mile have dominated the last 3 meetings, outscoring them 157-18. 157-18. Included last year's game where Hazel Park was just beaten down 65-6. That's brutal. That is cold. And it was not pretty. And I don't know what Kyle Riley is going to say to his team. I really don't know. The fact now they got to go to Warren Fitzgerald, their new field, their new turf field, and to say, well, taking on Warren Fitzgerald, they're still going to be pretty good. They've really have dominated you guys. And 157-18, that says a lot. It really does. Because when you look at what happened, this has been total annihilation, to say the least, that Hazel Park suffered. And they have not been very good lately. Really have not. Haven't made the playoffs since 2010. I mean, this could be very much a long year. Now, Hazel Park's got experience back. That should help them in this game. But, when you've gotten destroyed 157-18 in those games, last 3 years, last 3 meetings, that's going to make you thinking in your mind, saying, I don't know if we can beat these guys. I don't know if we can beat these guys. So it's going to be a tough fold. It really will be. I mean, this is going to be scary. It really is. Because Warren Fitzgerald's going to be very good again. Hazel Park could struggle. And if Hazel Park can put up a fight in this matchup, maybe, just maybe, got a chance in this game. They might have a chance in this game. So we'll see what happens in that one. We shall see. Next up, we got Groves taking on Novi. And this was an interesting game because Groves is 21-3 in their last 2 seasons. But they've had some graduation losses and, of course, the departure Colin Hurd transferred out to West Bloomfield. Novi has been on a roll in the last 2 seasons, despite the fact their record was 12-10. But they took out West Bloomfield that was unbeaten in 2015, as we mentioned earlier about the West Bloomfield topic. So this is a team, in my opinion, Novi could be a team that could do some damage. Now, the question for them is going to be is they're going to probably see a team called Novi Detroit Catholic Central in their district. That's a possibility. So this is going to be very interesting to say the least. So Groves are going to have their work cut out for them. Now, Jeff Dulac, of course, on his podcast, viewed Groves as a threat this year. Yeah, they're 21-3 the last 2 seasons, but they're replacing a ton of talent. I know Brandon Flaherty can coach, but when you look at Groves, they've got some questions. Serious questions. Do I think they're better than their city rival from Seaholm? I don't know. I don't necessarily think so because when you look at it, you look at Seaholm, they got a ton of experience back. Groves, on the other hand, does not. So that's an interesting dynamic. Really is, to say the least. That's pretty scary. That's going to be tough, to say the least. Next we have, this is going to be very interesting for Groves. Yeah, they're home. Groves is pretty good at home. But going against Novi, team that's undefeated, team that's got athletes, they're talented, pretty big school. It's going to be a tough task. It's going to be a really, really tough task. So that'll be very interesting to say the least there, between Groves and Novi. it'll be very interesting. Next, we got Harrison taking on East Grand Rapids. It'll be a road game for Harrison. They go to East Grand Rapids to take on the Pioneers. And, of course, this is an interesting matchup because this is going to be a big test for Harrison. Because East Grand Rapids went 8-3 last season. It's going to be tough. They play in that Ottawa-Kent Conference Gold Division. So whoever wins this game, it's going to help them. It's going to help their cause big time. East Grand Rapids in the Ottawa-Kent and Harrison in the white. So when you look at that matchup, Harrison, this is a very interesting matchup because Harrison took on East Kentwood last season, lost two heartbreakers the last 2 years to them. So when you look at this matchup, for Harrison, this is a matchup they need to win. This is a matchup the league needs to win. If Harrison can win this game, this is big for the league, big for the OA. Really is. So that'll be huge for this league. They need it pretty bad. They do. Next match we go to is Oxford and Romeo taking them on at Michigan. This is an interesting matchup. Romeo's won 9 of 12. They've won 9 of the last 12. They went their second straight state semifinal appearance where they end up losing to Novi Detroit Catholic Central. And, one of those losses was to Oxford. Romeo lost 27-26 on the blue turf. And that was a big win for the Wildcats that year. Huge win. Now, when you look at this matchup, Romeo's got some well-known names here. Nathan Golowski, perfect example. He's been huge for Romeo. In their last few games, he has been vital to the Bulldogs' success. He had a huge regional final against Clarkston. They also have a quarterback, Brandon Hicks, and receivers Evan Smith and Ronnie Wood. They're also back. Oxford's got Parker Fleming, Ben Krause. If they can find some receivers, who knows? But then comes the word defense. Defense has been Oxford's Achilles heel as of late. They've got to address that defense. I've said this for the past 3 seasons with this team. If Oxford does not address their defense, then they're in trouble. They've been in trouble with their defense. Because if you don't address your defense, the pound the rock scheme does not work. It's pretty simple. Because you got to have a lead to play the pound the rock offense. And if you don't have the lead, you're forced to play from behind, then the pound the rock scheme doesn't work. Doesn't work. So, it's a big game for Oxford. There's no doubt. But they got to have a good start in that game. If they don't, and Romeo goes and scores 2 early touchdowns early, it could be a long night for Oxford over there in Ann Arbor. It could be. But that'll be very interesting, to say the least, what happens there. Next up, we got Southfield Arts and Tech taking on Davison. It's at Wayne State. So when you look at this matchup, the magical question, can the Warriors stop Tariq Reed? Of course, Tariq Reed last year, he was a force for Davison. He created havoc in the Saginaw Valley. He had a big game against Lapeer. He was instrumental in their playoff run until they met Clarkson. Clarkson shut down Reed. That was the difference en route to the 34-14 win at Davison. Now, when you look at the difference between Southfield Arts and Tech and Clarkston, Clarkston, of course, is a team that they've got some questions at quarterback this year. They've got some questions at quarterback. Who's going to be their guy? Who's going to be the receivers? Whereas at Southfield Arts and Tech, You don't really have that question because they got a guy named John Darby on that team. They got some line concerns a little bit, though. But they got some athletes. I mean, I personally think Southfield Arts and Tech's defense, they are very athletic. They are, I think Tyreek Reed's going to have problems for the second straight week in a row against an OAA team. Second straight matchup against an OAA team. I think he's going to have broad problems because he's going to be a target. Yeah, Davison's got a good quarterback. There's no doubt about that. But when you look at that matchup, it's going to be tough, to say the least, how that unfolds. It really is. So I think when I look at this matchup, I think Southfield Arts and Tech will stop Tyreek Reed, and I think it could be a bloodbath at Wayne State. I really do think it will be. I'd be shocked if Davison wins that game. I would absolutely be shocked because all you got to do basically is shut down Tyreek Reed. You shut him down, you shut Davison down. That is the key component. Next up, we got West Bloomfield taking on Walled Lake Western. That'll be played at Michigan. I mentioned West Bloomfield earlier with their transfers. To me, this is a big one for West Bloomfield because we know about West Bloomfield's transfers. We know about Bryce Beasley. We know about Taj Mustafa, both coming over from Southfield Lathrop. We know about Mustafa and A.J. Abbott, who committed to Baltimore, Wisconsin commits. A.J. Abbott recently transferred in from Northville. Of course, you have Bryce Thompson. But you look at Walled Lake Western. They made some transfers. They made some headlines themselves, and they brought quarterback Sam Johnson in from Southfield Arts and Tech and Spencer Brown from Walled Lake Northern. The Johnson transfer kind of really was not surprising to me because I really thought when you look at the quarterback situation over there, you knew Johnson was on the way out, with the way that Southfield Arts and Tech played in the playoffs. They were better suited, I personally think, to run that read option. And when you look at that, instead of the spread attack where Sam Johnson wants to throw, a lot of the time, you look at that team, they were a much different team. Southfield Arts and Tech's a much different team. When they had John Darby. Of course, John Darby is a read option quarterback. Sam Johnson is not a read option quarterback. He's a spread quarterback. So when you look at the situation that unfolded, he had to leave. He left. He transferred out, went to Walled Lake Western. There was a quarterback opening over there. So he went over there. Then you have a guy named Spencer Brown, a lineman, transferred in from Walled Lake Northern. Very interesting how that unfolded. Walled Lake Northern transferred to Walled Lake Western. It made me wonder why. I understand Walled Lake Northern had a new football coach. But now you're bringing in a guy to go along with Joey George, Zach Fodell, Ryan Dickerson. That's their offensive line. That's not mentioning Justin Thomas, the wide receiver, who I think Colin Hurd or Christian Fitzpatrick's going to have that assignment. So that'll be very interesting to say the least. That's maybe the most interesting game in the state. I think for the league to make a statement, West Bloomfield has to win this game. They have to. And it comes down to my biggest concern. Line play. Now, I know Ron Bellamy, I know Coach Zach Kilbers, I know a lot of West Bloomfield Laker Nation in the swamp. I'm going to stress this out. Line play. You address your line, you'll be fine. Yeah, you got 3 starters back, but that line is the big concern. It's not anything else. You got a good defense, you got a good secondary, good linebackers. Your line play is the big concern. Really is. That's the $1 million question. You got the offense. You got the running back. You got the receivers. Line play is your biggest concern. Really is. So that is going to be an interesting match between West Bloomfield and Walled Lake Western down in the Big House. So that'll be very interesting to say the least. Then we got next is Oak Park and Utica Eisenhower. That'll be at Wayne State. Max Whitmer, quarterback at Utica Eisenhower. He was huge last year in their run the state semifinal. Lost to a very good Detroit Cass Tech team on a diamond. People showing touchdown. It's not Michigan. But if they can figure out the zone read and the read option offense of the Eagles, I think Oak Park can win this game. Their defense is very good when you look at Oak Park. And Greg Carter's defensive first coach. So when you look at that matchup, they got to stop Whitmer. That's the key. That's the key. Yes, Utica Eisenhower is a solid football team. There's no doubt about that. But when you look at this team, Oak Park, you got Dwan Mathis, your quarterback. You got Robert Daniel. You got your running game solid. You got talent. There's no doubt about that. You got line play for sure. I think you had the best lineman in the entire state, in my opinion. So, everything comes down to if you stop Max Whitmer, you're going to win. You're going to win. There's no doubt about it. You'll win. I got confidence. Then you got Orion versus Chippewa Valley. This is an interesting matchup because when you look at it here, yes, the Big Reds have beaten the Dragons 3 straight meetings. Chippewa Valley has a lot of players coming back. 40 players back, 16 projected starters from a team that went 6-3 a year ago. Chippewa Valley was young last year, and they beat Orion last year at Wayne State. That was shocking. The Dragons have made some changes. When you look at, you have John Blackstock's the new head coach over there. They have a ton of talent back. They were a 5-4 team a year ago, made the playoffs. But this is going to be a big test for the Dragons because when you look at Lake Orion, they got a very tough schedule. There's no doubt about that. I mean, this is a football team that's got a lot of questions when you look at it. Depth, for the first time, I can say depth's a big concern for Lake Orion. I mean, I'll be honest. I've seen them practice. I've seen them. They don't have a lot of depth, which is a big concern to me. It really is. But then again, it's early. It really is early. So, but that's a concern I have. Of course, experience favors Chippewa Valley in this matchup. They got some key players back. They got Brian Sinek back, their linebacker. They got Javon Kimpson, their defensive back. You got Jacob Rubicki and Marcel Lewis. But let's not forget, sophomore year, this is the same group, the senior class, that Lake Orion went into Chippewa Valley and won that game. So that's very interesting to say the least. So this team's got some talent. But I'm very concerned about experience for Lake Orion. Really, really concerned. So when you look at that matchup, depth, experience, big concern for the Dragons. But I think this is a big game the league needs, and here's why. Because you think about it, if all these teams win, Orion, Oak Park, Chippewa, Orion, Oak Park, West Bloomfield, South Edison Tech, Oxford, Harrison, Groves, Hazel Park, North Farmington, Clarkston, Ferndale, Troy Athens, Pontiac, Royal Oak, Stony Creek. If they all win their games, it's going to make the OAA a stronger conference in football, especially in week 1. That'll make the league a stronger conference. Now, there's some tough matchups here. When you look at Chippewa Valley for Orion, Utica Eisenhower for Oak Park, Wall Lake Western for West Bloomfield. When you look at Romeo for Oxford, East Grand Rapids for Harrison, Novi for Groves. Warren Fitzgerald for Hazel Park, Greenville for North Farmington. And you look at Warren Mott for Troy Athens. Lakeview for Royal Oak. It's not. They're not easy games. They're not going to be easy games. At least they won't be easy games. Now I didn't mention other games like Bloomfield Hills taking on Seaholm, or Farmington versus Berkeley, Rochester versus Adams. Those games are OA versus OA games, and I didn't recognize those matchups. And of course Troy Avenue, I didn't recognize that one. So those 4 games are OA versus OA games. non-league games. I'm not going to go more into depth surrounding those matchups because they're OAA teams with OAA teams. So, so that's very interesting. I'm not going to recognize I'm not going to go into the names. The Seaholm Bloomfield Hills matchup, the Troy Avenel matchup, the Farmington Berkeley matchup, and of course the Rochester Adams matchups because they are OAA versus OAA teams. So, get more into depth surrounding those type of teams there. Final thoughts. It'll be very interesting to see what happens in that stretch. It'll be very interesting to see what happens in that stretch. Be key. So we'll see what happens there heading into that fold. Other news. Let's go to boys basketball. Of course, West Bloomfield brought in a boys basketball transfer. Donovan Moore. He's a junior. He is the grandson of former West Bloomfield coach Larry Moore. Of course, Moore took West Bloomfield's both their programs to the Final Four in the early 2000s. And Moore in Illinois was averaging about 22 points a game last winter. So, so this is I like the move to put him together with Trey Harvey. You got Kevin McAdoo, who graduated from a team went to Final Four. I think West Bloomfield's a basketball team to keep an eye on for sure heading in the winter months. I mean, so it'll be interesting to see what happens with them going forward. But anyway, it's a good move, I think, for him to bring in another transfer from Illinois. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, especially when you have West Bloomfield ties like Larry Moore does with his son, with his grandson, Donovan Moore. So interesting move to bring in the West Bloomfield, to compete for Coach Jeremy Dana. It's a good move for him. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with them going forward. So my final thoughts this week, of course, when you look at it here, it's 4th of July weekend. I know in girls basketball are still looking for some coaches at West Bloomfield, Berkeley, and Groves. So, we'll see what happens. Keep up to the blog at Inside the OAA at Sammy_Termina at blogspot.com. When you look at the situation, how that unfolded. And, of course, we'll see what happens going forward. I want to wish everybody a happy 4th of July. We're getting there. It'll be really interesting to see because 4th of July will be in the middle of next week. So we'll see what happens going forward surrounding everything surrounding the league. Of course, keep an eye on the blog at Sammy_Termina at blogspot.com. So, we'll see what happens going forward there. Okay, now I'm signing off here. You enjoy everybody here. We'll see you all. We'll see you all either next week or in 2 weeks. So take care, everybody. Happy 4th of July. God bless all. Take care, everybody.
OAA Now is produced at Orion Neighborhood Television, Lake Orion's community media outlet. To learn more about ONTV, visit our website at www.orionontv.org or call us at 248-393-1060.